What is up, guys? Welcome to Garage 23, and this is our 2005 VK56DE engine, and this is what's going to be going in our 2005 Nissan Titan. As you guys may have seen in our previous videos, the original engine in our Titan partied a little too hard because our previous owner there, you sent her a little too hard there, bud. Just a little bit, because you split cylinder 2 straight in half. This was a piston. And so that happened, and then the rods tried to keep going, and they just got bent in a few places, and it just got stuck in place. So that sucker's basically destined for the scrap heap at this point. So that's why we had to get a whole new engine. And this one's even better because it has about 75,000 less miles than the other one. Our Titan currently has 215,000. This sucker's got 140,000, so that's a big plus. And another big plus is that it was super cheap, but that's kind of not a plus because it's super cheap because it has a bit of a boo-boo. So we're gonna have to see if John can save us from this one. Hopefully I didn't buy a big paperweight. So let's see if he can save it. So yeah, this right here is why we got it so cheap. 2 broken off engine mount bolts, 1 stripped out one, and 1 sort of working one. So this is why we needed John's help to see if he can save us from having bought a $200 paperweight. He's basically just gonna try and weld on some nuts to whatever remains of the previous bolts that were in the block for the engine mount bracket. And luckily, we got a pretty good winning streak going here, so let's see if we can get all of them fixed. Gonna hit this one with the impact, because I was feeling brave, but luckily it worked out. Ooh. That doesn't work. All right, I didn't have a whole lot of hope for that one. No faith in that one.
You got it? Nope. Yep.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that is the end too. Not what we were going for, but it worked. Test failed successfully.
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
Smoky.
Look at what's left of this bolt.
There's no way.
My God, man. That's amazing. Why didn't they just do that from the start?
Not everybody knows that too. They don't just rely on pets and dyes and hopes and prayers. Junkie.
Okay, now that John worked his voodoo magic on this thing, it looks like we got a pretty good shot. I straight up did not think any of those bolts were going to be extractable. But it was pretty amazing, especially this one. I mean, I'm keeping that as a trophy. Look at that. So yeah, that was just straight up magic. And this one too, but this one's not as impressive as this one. But anyway, 3 of the 4 bolt holes are clear and rethreaded. It's just the 4th one was like so jacked that we just had to fill in the whole thing, and we're gonna have to re-drill and tap that one all together. So to do that, we're gonna need some parts from the old engine, like the motor mount brackets. But first, I think I'm gonna go give this stuff a wash because it's pretty gross, especially the other side. So yeah, be right back. Okay, we got this thing all cleaned up. Now to see if we can still bolt it on. All right, so far so good. Those felt pretty decent. There's no jiggling or anything, so. All right, those look pretty good. So now to mark our 4th bolt hole. All right, so there we have our center punch. And this is gonna be a 10 millimeter by 1.5 thread pitch. So that needs about a 11 30-second drill bit. And this is the only one I have. And it doesn't look great. I'm hoping this works well enough. We need it to be about this deep, so that's about an inch, like 26 millimeters or so. And we are at 8 millimeters, so we got a bit to go. And we got to try and keep it straight the whole time. Okay, so we need to drill about 26 millimeters. So I'm gonna go to about 25. It's about there. And we're gonna tape the drill bit at this end, so that way we have a better idea of where to stop. All right, that's about it. I think we broke into the old threads because I could feel it get a little wobbly in there. Now, to get our tap and rethread that hole. Okay, so now we can put our motor mount bracket back on, and we're gonna use these aftermarket bolts just because they're a little bit longer and they have a couple more threads than the factory ones. And also the factory one, I think, especially this bolt, I think it got like pushed and like oblonged or something, because the factory bolt just kind of slips in and out. So that's not supposed to do that. But if I use one of these other ones, it doesn't. And I thought it was interesting because they're the same size, but the factory one is like 9.6-ish. And these aftermarket ones are 9.7, yeah, like 979. So these are actually a little thicker. I don't know if that's because their quality control is lacking and they're not technically in spec or something, or if they're better than the factory ones. But regardless, we're gonna use these because they're gonna hold the motor more securely. So let's see if we can thread all of them on. Hopefully we drilled this hole perpendicular, not all cockeyed or something. Yeah, it looks decent. Yeah, good as new. All right, next up is gonna be cleaning this engine up and removing this chewed up engine harness, as well as like trying to clean off as much of the grime and gunk as we can. Then we can start putting in some new shiny bits.
なるほど。これが ASMR。Looks like something out of the Matrix. Garbage. It'd have been nice if they didn't cut the stupid thing. I might have been able to use it for something else, but oh well. They didn't even have a clamp on it.
All right, now we're gonna give the motor a little bit of a wash, and to do that, we're gonna use some radioactive Windex. I'm just kidding, it's just degreaser. This is a one Harbor Freight sells. It's like a gallon thing, you dilute it. And this is the only spray bottle I could find because we're eco-friendly and we try to recycle stuff around here, AKA we're cheap. And stuff's nice because it doesn't like mess up aluminum or anything like that. I used to use oven cleaner. It works really good. It like really eats up grease and stuff, but it also kind of like etches aluminum. So that may not be desirable depending on what you're working on. All right, we got the whole thing pretty much soaked. So we're gonna let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. And while it's doing that, I'm gonna look for something to tape up the throttle body and any other openings that we don't want water to get in. So just gonna let that chill. All right, it's been sitting for a few minutes. Now we're ready to try and blast all this junk off. Okay, we got this thing all cleaned up and it's dry now. Doesn't really look like we cleaned a whole lot or anything, but I swear it's clean. Yeah, probably should try scrubbing more or something, but that's fine. Now, we're gonna get some of these extra hoses off to just get them out of the way. Yeah, let's spill fuel all over the place. That's a great idea. This stupid thing, I had like the hardest time getting this, I don't even know what kind of fitting this is, push lock, I think? I don't know. But I ended up breaking it off the Titan. We need to not do that here, or at least try not to damage it. But I'll figure out something for that later. For now, I'll just get all these breather hoses off. Stop it. All these hoses are like super crusty too and dirty, even though we cleaned everything. But I'm probably just gonna replace all those anyway, because might as well while we're in here. Now to get this valve cover off and just check out what kind of condition the motor's actually in. First gotta remove the coil packs. And all the bolts for the valve cover. All right, let's see what we got in here. Oof, that was actually on there. You know, it really doesn't look all that much better than the 200,000 mile engine. Yeah, at least there's no sludge really. It's not too bad. This is pretty clear evidence of extended oil change intervals. That's how you get this like tarnished kind of look. If you were more meticulous with your oil changes, the oil wouldn't have time to cook and stain the metal. It would be a lot clearer and you wouldn't have this brown color. So, but I mean, this is kind of what you'd expect out of a work truck. They're not, you know, kept up with maintenance the best. So, but we know this one runs and it, at the very least it spins. So definitely better than what we started with. Now we're gonna replace the spark plugs, and we also got something fancy to throw on, which is these aluminum replacement valve covers. So one of the main issues with most current Nissans really, because the VQ is the same way, and this company Mitzone, they actually make aluminum valve covers for the VQ35 and 37 also. So that's a big plus because stock valve covers are expensive and they're still plastic. And the main issue with the plastic ones is that they eventually deform and then they don't seal up as well and you start getting leaks, and then the leak is like right over the exhaust manifold, so then your car starts smoking whenever you drive it. So that's not a good situation and it's potentially unsafe. So This is an awesome upgrade, and they look to be pretty well made. Even like the oil filter, oil cap area has like a nice little O-ring that goes there. So it's pretty cool. And obviously it comes with new gaskets and even comes with new hardware. So that's gonna be awesome. And then we got some new Denso plugs to go in while we're in here. I usually use NGK plugs, but Denso is also really good. Denso is the OEM for most of the VQ37s, I think, and the more modern engines like the VQ35HR. But I've always used NGKs for some reason, because that's what the older Nissan engines used to use. But I figured this would be fine, and they're slightly cheaper than the NGK version. So, but first we got to remove these spark plugs, and we also want to check the spark plugs, see what condition those were in, because the way it's shaping up, they're probably the original ones also. So probably due for replacement. Yeah, NGK Iridiums. Still look pretty old though, and not in the best condition. Now I kind of feel bad for getting the platinum one. Somebody actually spent the money and got nice plugs for this thing. 7 more to go. So the main thing you want to look for is that all the plugs look the same. Even though they look a little worn and toasty, you just want to make sure they all look like that. If you get any that are like overly dark or overly light, then that's an indication of a more complicated issue. Okay, now we got all the spark plugs out, and I think we should try to spin it around now that we don't have anything blocking the airflow out of the cylinders. Just to make sure it spins smoothly. Big upgrade from our previous engine. Yeah. All right, so now we're gonna put our new spark plugs in. And whenever you replace your spark plugs, you always want to have a little bit of anti-seize ready, just so you minimize the risk of your spark plugs getting stuck in the cylinder head. Because let me tell you, that is not only a bad day, that is probably a bad week, potentially a bad month. Because yeah, extracting a broken spark plug in the head can potentially mean you pulling the engine apart. Just a little glizzy drizzle on your spark plug and they'll be good to go. And just slide them on in there. Also, you want to be careful when you throw them in there. You don't want to just like toss them in, because these already come pre-gapped. And I've seen where like somebody will just like toss them in there, and then the end hits against the cylinder head in there, or the threads, I guess, I don't know. But it'll close up the gap a bit and potentially close it like all the way, depending on how much gap it started with. And then it's not gonna run right. So just carefully place them in there. So these packs are like $2 or $3 from AutoZone or O'Reilly's. And I've literally been using the same pack for like the past year or two. Probably 2 years at least. Also, when installing your spark plugs, you never want to use any kind of tool. I don't even like using the ratchet when I'm starting out. Just do it by hand, nice and slow, because again, the last thing you want to do is cross thread your spark plug in the cylinder head. Then once you get to where it's hand tight, then go ahead and use your ratchet. All right, now for the next 4. All right, we got all the spark plugs out, and another thing you want to do is keep all your spark plugs in order so you can keep track of which ones came out of which cylinder. So here we got cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and they all look pretty good. They look nice and evenly medium rare, or medium well, I guess. So yeah, they're in good shape, and they're good quality spark plugs. Let's go ahead and throw our replacements in. Okay, now we're ready to install our new valve covers, but first we gotta remove the old gasket and clean up any gross stuff that's left behind. satisfying. It actually wasn't in terrible shape either. Actually, you can see toward the edges it was starting to crack. So yeah, it would have lasted a bit longer, but it was probably leaking to some extent because you can see where there's like cooked oil toward the outer edges. So now we just clean up all this. All right, we got all the mating surfaces about as clean as they're gonna get. So now we're ready to put some silicone on them. And I like to keep it OEM with the Permatex Ultra Gray because most of the silicone the Nissan uses is also gray. And oh, that was another thing I wanted to bring up to you guys is it's weird that there's silicone spilling out from the timing covers because Nissan wouldn't do this crap of a job. And then I noticed there's also orange silicone down at the oil pan. So this engine's definitely been apart before, but I don't know why it would have been taken apart. Like there's no, cause like on VQs, the water pump is inside the timing case. So I can see that being taken apart for that. But like the only thing under here is the timing chain. So either this thing got a whole new timing set at some point, or it was overheated and had to get the heads pulled and resurfaced and put back together, in which case, hopefully we get a little bit more compression out of it. I don't know, but I mean, the thing ran, so I'm not too worried about it. I just don't like the idea that someone's already been in here before me, particularly someone that doesn't care enough to clean up their mess of silicone. So, yeah, it is what it is. But to install our valve cover gaskets, we just need to put a couple little dabs of silicone in these corners here, just like that. And on the other side, over here as well. That's not the prettiest either, but you just want to use that to help seal that very corner where the gasket goes from that curve to the flat face of the rest of the head. So now we're ready for our new valve cover and gasket. The gasket's already kind of installed on here, so pretty much just need to put it in place. So one thing I'm noticing is that these inner seals don't quite want to go around the spark plug tube, but I'm just kind of pushing them in with my finger and it's going around just fine. It's probably just that they're too new. Whereas like the old ones are already kind of stiffened up and they just like plop over the spark plug tube more easily. So I'm just kind of pushing around the edge to get the gasket to seat around there. I'm gonna try a little WD-40 on this one, see if it goes on a little easier. Nope, not really. So I'm like trying to push it down, but they don't quite go around the spark plug tube. And now we can start snugging everything down. And the awesome thing is that it even comes with new hardware. Nice and shiny. So a little bit of a pain getting these spark plug well gaskets in place, but other than that, pretty good quality. I was a little concerned about cracking one of the little ears off because these supplied hardware, they're the same dimensions as the OEM hardware, but since the gasket's new, they don't quite seat down all the way. And I'm afraid if I try to tighten it all the way down to where the shank of the fastener meets the head, I'm afraid it's gonna crack the valve cover. So I'm just gonna leave it like that. They're all pretty snug, but now we gotta install our oil filler neck, this is the only part that's different from the factory valve cover, because this is obviously just built into the factory one, but on this one it's a little different, and it comes with a little O-ring, and that goes right here. And it's a little on the small side. There we go. And then the fill tube goes over that. With these little screws that they provide. All right, there we go. And it even comes with a brand new oil cap. Ta-da. Now, last thing we need is to put our coil packs back on. And I should probably clean those because those are gonna look pretty gross if I put them back on our shiny new valve cover. Now for the other side. All right, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. We got our engine from all greasy and gross to looking pretty rad. So join us on next week's episode when we throw it in the Titan and see if it makes some noise. So see you guys next time, and remember, always do your best.
できなかった人はちゃんと復習するようにね。